It's a threat that Turkiye long warned about, but is just now getting attention in Europe. According to Germany's domestic intelligence agency, the PKK is the largest extremist organization operating in the country. A recent report says the PKK has been recruiting members in Germany and raising millions of dollars for its operations. Berlin has recognized the PKK as a terrorist organization since 1993. But as Sibel Karkuş reports from the German capital, its security forces don't always treat it like one.
From money laundering and drug dealing to human trafficking and terror funding. An annual security report by Germany's domestic intelligence agency, BFV, has laid out how the PKK terror group operates across the country. Berlin says it's well aware of the threat.
Our attitude towards the PKK remains the same. It's classified as a foreign terrorist association and is being fought as such.
But it seems like a half-hearted fight. Despite a general ban, the PKK has been openly recruiting and freely holding rallies in the heart of Europe. Its affiliates, such as the YPG, are not even recognized as terror groups. That's why Turkey last month summoned both German and French envoys to Ankara.
We strongly warned them. We made it clear to Germany and France that we object to them allowing these terrorists to demonstrate in their countries. We requested that it not be allowed in the future.
But despite several calls for action from its NATO ally, Berlin has done little to limit the PKK's activities in the country. Germany recognized the PKK as an international terrorist organization nearly 3 decades ago. Back then, the PKK described the country as its war enemy number 2 right after Turkiye. Since then, however, Germany has become the terrorists' backyard. An intelligence report shows its funding and recruitment activities are flourishing in the country. It says the PKK has more than 14,000 followers in Germany who committed more than 300 crimes last year. They included violent attacks and property damage, mostly against the Turkish community. The terror organization raised nearly $18 million through various fundraising campaigns last year alone, according to the intelligence report. German officials warn PKK terrorists have become the biggest foreign extremist group in the country. But Germany is not its target.
Here they raise funds and try to exert political influence, and we see large-scale donation campaigns by organizations that are close to the PKK. Those funds are then used to finance the terror in Turkey.
But the PKK's reach goes far beyond Germany. Since the 1980s, the PKK has been responsible for the deaths of more than 40,000 Turkish civilians and security forces. That's why Ankara has launched a series of operations to fight the terror organization at its source and safeguard Turkey's borders. With the latest being Clawlock, a multi-pronged operation in northern Iraq that targeted PKK weapons depots and hideouts. Over the past decade, the Turkish armed forces operations have significantly dented the PKK's ability to launch cross-border attacks into Turkey. For the PKK, losing ground in this region means higher dependency on Europe. The terror organization continues to strengthen its foothold in Germany, and officials will have to consider whether they want that trend to continue. Sibel Karkuş, Straight Talk, Berlin.
And to discuss how serious the threat from the PKK is, I'm joined by Klaus Jurgens from Innsbruck, Austria. He is a political analyst who specializes in Turkish policies and security challenges. And from Istanbul, Mehmet Celik is the managing editor at daily Sabah. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. Thanks for joining me. Klaus, let me begin with you. Germany's domestic intelligence agency has recently acknowledged that the PKK is the biggest foreign extremist group in the country. How significant is that they're finally acknowledging that threat?
Yes, actually, I'm very happy that they finally went so far. It is perhaps a small step, but a step into the right direction. For the first time, not only the number was mentioned, hardly no change last year, 14,500 sympathizers, but then 300 related crimes, mostly alongside manifestations and demonstrations. But The real crucial part in the report this year is that it is specifically mentioned that the PKK is a threat, and that includes Germany, and that fundraising, trying to lure young people in particular into the ranks of the PKK, and manifestations and demonstrations, propaganda, so to speak, are the three key pillars. And half of all financing of the PKK on European soil is now actually collected in Germany. I think it is showing other EU countries, not talking about NATO expansion now or Sweden, but it's showing other EU nations how seriously German intelligence finally takes the threat. Let's hope action will follow. My biggest wish is that manifestations and demonstrations and everything else will be forbidden from now on.
So, Mehmet, why do you think they have come up with this conclusion now? What do you make of the timing?
Well, I think timing is very crucial with regards to the recent debate when it comes to Sweden and Finland's NATO membership bid. But on the other hand, I think the European countries have recently come to a realization that the PKK is now, in a sense, a homegrown terrorist organization. Now, they have actually been there for decades. They're, like Klaus said, they're the fundraising, child recruitment, fundraising, and all that, and also drug trafficking is a big part of this too. For many decades, I think this anarchism and extremism was separated in a way from the terrorist organization and what it actually actively does in Turkey, because they were finding a lot of political legitimacy and political support, particularly from the radical left in Europe. But now I think in recent years, the fact that even mainstream politicians have in a way been turning a blind eye to the presence of PKK, I think it raises concerns. Now, this was established through the Syria problem, the Syria problem, but now actually they're realizing that this is a direct threat to European citizens through these illegitimate and illegal activities within European boundaries.
Yes, but Klaus, what's holding them back when it comes to clamping down on these terror groups or organizations? What's at stake for the European countries? Are they trying to balance the rights of assembly and free speech with tackling security threats?
Well, it is unfortunately true. Out of my own experience, when I grew up, I watched on television policemen protecting demonstrators, PKK demonstrators. And only recently in Austria, family went to an underground station. There were people waving flags, Öcalan flags, and openly challenged the very friendly, but still the policeman at asking, do you not know who is demonstrating here? And indeed, the answer was, we got, yes, but we have free speech in this country. I think it was a misperception, a complete misunderstanding. Who is a freedom fighter? What is a revolution? And many who are now in power are actually from a student generation where people said, yes, we must fight capitalism, we must fight any aggression. And over the decades, they misinterpreted that the PKK is actually a threat to democracy, and there are no freedom fighters, or as I always say, no old tea-drinking clubs. I think it is the perception gap. I hope it will change. I'm still hoping that in particular my generation comes to terms with it, how dangerous this group of people still is. And as my esteemed colleague said, yes, they have backtracked to European soil. Soon they will be no longer existent in Türkiye, I hope. But then they want to find perhaps new targets, God forbid. And the European intelligence should keep a very, very close eye on that.
So, Mehmet, Thomas Haldenwang, the head of the German Domestic Intelligence Agency, said the PKK is using various associations in Germany to recruit young people as foreign fighters who are then sent to Turkiye, Syria, and Iraq. Why hasn't the German government cracked down on this when fighters were being, for example, recruited for Daesh? They were acted swiftly. Is there a double standard here?
Well, I think when it comes to approach to terrorism, double standard, as you said, is as you call it, or as you termed it, it's a very good term to use when it comes to fight against the PKK versus fight against other terrorist organizations. And this is not just Europe as a continent, but the Western world in general has a different approach, has a hypocritical and a double standard approach when it comes to a fight against terrorism. I mean, if we are going to support a terrorist organization against another terrorist organization, how does this make us look when it comes to genuine fight against terrorist organizations, particularly those that are targeting your own allies in the region? And this is simply the case when it comes to PKK support and the fight against terrorism from the European perspective. They're definitely picking and choosing who to support and who to stand against. And PKK has been given a freeway for many decades now. And recently there has been steps. Of course, we have seen these reports come up many times. Europol reports, European Drug Agency reports. They have already mentioned this threat.
Yes.
But unfortunately, concrete steps are missing, and this is a direct result of double standards and hypocrisy in terms of policy against developing policy and taking action against these terrorist organizations.
Yes. So, Klaus, meanwhile, there has been an ongoing smearing campaigns against Turkey on German state media, among its NGOs and other groups. How prevalent is the pro-PKK and anti-Turkish government attitude in the German government, the state media, and other outlets? I mean, do they have a history of interfering in Turkey's politics?
The problem is, over the decades, mainstream media in particular, even if they have not turned completely anti-Turkey, but many of them are Turkey biased, then you only have to listen to some people who say that there is a kind of authoritarian way inherent in the politics of Turkey without any clue what is actually happening, in particular the last 2 decades, and what a kind of democratic reform process has been implemented here. The real problem is those sympathizers have apparently access to funds, have access to politicians. I will go back to 2013, the so-called Gezi Park protests. I said jokingly at the time, some international media colleagues probably are going to book a suite overlooking the Taksim Square, hoping that the democratically elected government might be toppled. Even if the German public never would buy into that, the problem is the German media did not portray it in the way it is. Then we go back to this heinous coup attempt. And the same is happening, as if whatever Turkey does is wrong anyway. If I still have half a minute, now come back to Sweden. And Sweden is unfortunately part of the wider problem. If you side with the YPG or the SDC or the SDF, not acknowledging that these are clear links to the PKK. Now then the Swedish government inviting a full delegation of the SDC to Stockholm. Of course, then the media thinks, the population thinks, these are nice guys, yes. These are freedom fighters. Sensational. So the problem is big, but I hope it can be overcome. But unfortunate, yes.
All right, gentlemen. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.